Hello and welcome to Baxter Sigma Spectrum Pump in Service. This is Sean Halsman, paramedic and education guy, and this is a very short in service to go over the Baxter transfer pumps and to deal with some of the issues and concerns that come up with the pumps. Please watch to the very end for some important information.
Hi, I'm Janeen Bass. I'm a clinical educator for Kaleida Health in the emergency department at Suburban and DeGraff.
Chris Manning, paramedic, Twin City.
And today what we're going to do is just show you some troubleshooting and some shortcuts when it comes to the Baxter pump that you'll be using during transports between the Kaleida facilities. So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to actually load the tubing. So the biggest thing that you need to remember is this little blue clip right here. The clip is basically the key to open up the front door to the pump to actually load your tubing. It'll only fit in one way, so you can't make a mistake with it. So you're going to go ahead and push in, and that's going to actually pop it open. Okay. Then you'll notice that it actually gives you guidance. The nice thing with this pump is if you actually slow down and read the pump will actually tell you what to do. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to load the set. And so to load the set, and so Chris, I'll have you do this. Press by part 1. Yep, so press it fully. Yep, you got it. Press 2, and then between number 3 and number 4. Perfect. Your tubing is loaded, so you can go ahead and shut the door. All right, and once you do that, go ahead and pull out the key. Okay. It's going to ask, because we're setting this up as a new patient, we're just going to go ahead and say yes, and then we'll program a drip in. In this case, if we actually had a patient that we were transporting down and the patient's on dopamine at 10 mics, and let's just say you had to do it to maintain a certain blood pressure, and you want to actually titrate up on this. The great thing with this is the pump can continually run while you're doing a dose change. So to do the dose change, all you have to do is hit dose change. There you go. And you'll notice that the dosing came up right there. So it's 10. We want to go up to 15. So go ahead and change it to 15. All right. Every time that you put a dose in or change, it's going to ask you, is it okay to confirm? So okay to confirm. There you go. And then you're going to press run to keep it running. And that's all there is to a dose change. Dose change is one of the easiest things that you can do because it keeps the pump running, and all you have to do is change the dose and you're over and done with.
Okay, so we're going to have a scenario in this point where Janeen's going to talk us through a patient who is intubated and on a vent, and during the transport, the sedation starts to wear off. So the patient's becoming distressed. You're seeing signs that the patient's starting to have some problems with that tube, and we're going to increase the propofol to a higher level per medical control.
Okay, so you call medical control, and let's just say that they say to go up, we'll just say by 5. If you go ahead, remember the pump will keep running through a dose change. So all you have to do is go and hit dose change. There you go. It's going to highlight your dose, so you can go ahead and change it now to 10. So you'll titrate up to 10. Every time you put a dose in, it's always going to ask you okay to confirm. Okay, and then the last thing is to run at the new delivery rate. Yeah, and that's all there is to doing a dose change. So there's a number of different alarms that may trigger when you're taking care of a patient, and probably one of the most frustrating ones is errand line, because you're like, where do I even start with that? So if you get an errand line, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and open up the door, and if you take a look and see what the screen says to say, that's exactly what it says to do. Okay. So when you do that, the first thing that you should do is take a look and see if you can physically see any air in the line, and if you do, try to get rid of it. 2 ways to get rid of it is you're going to unload your clamp completely, and you might need to open up your roller clamp and run some of your fluid in that way. If it's a small bubble, you might be able to actually flick that bubble and let it go back up and let gravity do its job. Okay, so let's go ahead and reload. My favorite button on the entire thing is silence. So just always know you can silence it. Silence is just going to make the alarm be quiet. And I find I always silence when I hear an alarm come off, because when alarms are going off, I get stressed out. So if I silence, it gives me a minute to think about it first. Okay. Good. There's still air in the line. Let's take a look. It is the most frustrating thing about this pump.
So you're basically just running it through at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it's something that I don't want to give a huge bolus of, I'll just be really careful and just
Okay.
make sure to run it in. So even if it's a small amount, you just want to do it enough to get that little bit of air past it.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. And now it's asking us if we want to continue it, and we're going to go ahead and hit run. There we go. It's going to ask you again to just check all your clamps to make sure that they're running and that you're seeing drips run in the chamber, and they are. You got it. And we're back up and running.
So I've noticed that if the sight tube for the IV is close to the pump, we seem to get a lot of air and line occlusions.
Great point. So you really ideally want the top of your bag from your pump about 24 inches apart. So best thing you can do is go ahead and raise that bag up. And you'll find that it does two things. You'll get less air in the alarm, and you'll get less chances of a upstream occlusion. Some of the alarms that you may run into most frequently are either upstream or downstream alarms. So we're going to go over both of those and show you how to troubleshoot through those alarms. The easiest one is the downstream alarm, because if the patient self-corrects, it will actually do that by itself. So let's just say you have a patient with a line in the AC, the patient bends their arm, and it'll go off downstream again. If you just tell the patient to straighten out their arm, it'll self-correct. So we'll show you how to do that. So it's showing that downstream alarm. It is telling me what to do, but if I just tell the patient to straighten out their arm, you'll see that it corrected itself very quickly. All right, the next alarm are upstream alarms. Those don't happen too often. Usually the biggest culprit from those is that this tubing on top has actually just gotten kinked because it's a little bit too droopy. It doesn't happen a ton, but it could happen. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to clamp it off on the top so you can actually see what happens with the alarm. So in this case, this is an upstream occlusion. With an upstream occlusion, you actually always have to address it. It won't self-correct like the downstream alarm would. So all we're going to do is go ahead and press silence, okay? And then you're going to just trace your tubing and see where you can find the occlusion. Most likely where that is, it's usually that this piece of tubing that comes out of the top is just bent over because the nurse who programmed it maybe had a little extra slack. If you go back to the beginning and just straighten it out, in this case, we put a clamp on there just so you can see it go off. And once we do that, now I can go ahead, hit run. So again, read your pump. The pump will always tell you what to do. Okay, it's going to ask if those drips are flowing. Yep, they're flowing. And now we're going back to running our drip. What we thought we'd do today, while we had the opportunity to talk about pumps, is to talk about a situation that you might run into periodically if you're transferring a acute ischemic stroke patient from suburban orthograph down to the GVI. And that's a patient who may be receiving Alteplase. So Alteplase is a clot-busting drug that we administer to patients to try to break down that embolus and restore circulation to the brain. And so key things with that is it needs to be given as soon as possible. So in the emergency department, we really rush to make sure that we're getting that patient in as soon as possible. And you may even find when they call you for transport that you may be waiting for us to give the drug because we have to mix it up and get it up right away because we call you so quickly to get that patient downtown. The other piece of it is it's weight-based and dose-dependent. And so it's really important for the patient to get the entire dose. So what may happen is on the way downtown, even though we try to time it differently, the infusion may be complete, but you'll notice that the tubing is very long and actually has about 20 mLs of the drug still kept within the tubing. And so what you'll need to do for that is actually take down the drug, so make sure that the bag is completely empty, and then hang what we call a flush bag. So when you leave the hospital with your patient, the nurse should give you two things. They'll give you a flush bag that's labeled. The label actually has the instructions on what to do. And then they should also give you the pump instructions. So the pump instructions just make it a little bit easier in case you forget, because you won't run into this situation very often. But the label actually has the instructions as well. So what we're going to do is I actually have this running as if it's Alteplase, and we're going to actually let it run out and go through the process of actually changing that bag over. So I just set it for 0.1 ml, so I should go pretty quickly. Okay. All right, so if this was the patient, the first thing I want to do is assure that the bag is actually empty. And if there's a little bit left in the bag, just squeeze that extra bit amount into the drip chamber so that way you're actually changing the empty bag out. Now we'll say that we're going to change the empty bag out, so I'm going to hand that to you. right, and go ahead and just switch that over. And so we follow the directions directly. I'm just going to go ahead and read them off. So the first thing is that the pump will alarm when the volume to be infused has been delivered, and press stop. Okay, good. You're going to remove the empty Alteplase bag and attach the 50 ml bag, which is what we already did. Maintain the same infusion rate because we want the drug to go in at the same rate. All we want to do is flush it through. So all you're going to do in this case is change the volume to be infused, and you'll notice that it actually highlighted the volume to be infused because it was 0, and we're going to change it to 25. So go ahead and change it to 25, and then hit run. Oh, hit OK first, then hit run. All right. Just like in previous times, it's just going to ask you to make sure that everything's running, which it is. And now that's going to run in. And so what that's going to do is it's going to take this saline and it's going to push through the rest of that drug. If you're still transporting, which I doubt that'll happen, but if you are still transporting, once that infusion part is done, the 25 mLs goes in, the infusion is complete, and you can just turn off the pump. A nice thing to add to that is this is another situation that may happen occasionally with other drugs. So think about intermittent infusions such as antibiotics. Chris had mentioned Keppra. If that happens en route where that drug runs out, that patient still needs the rest of the dose in here. So just take a bag, 100 bag from your unit, go ahead and hang it up on top, keep the rate the same, and do the same things. Change the volume to be infused for 25 mLs, and that'll assure that everything gets flushed through with the tubing. And just let the nurse know that when you arrive and give report that you flushed the tubing, so that way they know that the patient's gotten the complete dose of the drug. One more source that's available to you for extra help is a quick reference guide. And so we've shared this with your team over at Twin City. They'll be available in your vent bags. And it just gives you some quick information about how to load the tubing, how to program the pump, and how to make the changes that we've discussed already. So it's just another quick reference in case you forget. But the best advice I can give you is to just look at your pump screen. If you look at the pump screen, it will actually tell you what to do. And that's the best thing about this pump is it's really hard to make mistakes if you read the screen. But I know me, I'm usually in a hurry and I don't read the screen first. So take your time, read the screen, and that's really going to give you the best advice.
Okay, so that's a pump training video. Thank you for watching. I want to thank Janeen for bringing us in today and having us do some work with her. The new Degraph ER, by the way, is beautiful. Once you guys see that, it's going to be a nice looking addition to the hospital. I want to thank Chris for coming along today to help us with this training as well. If you find yourself in a situation, guys, where you are confused or this training is not popping up in your brain because you're a little bit stressed, obviously you have medical control. You can call the hospital, and doctors and nurses on the phone should be able to help you through that process of changing if you don't remember how to do it. So don't freak out, but this is just designed to help you a little bit with those transfers we get occasionally. And thanks for watching. Be safe out there.
And if it's a pump issue, ask for a nurse. The doctors won't know what to do with that.
And thank you to Kaleida Health for having us out to their Degraph location. Thank you to Nurse Janeen Bass for the training and the information, and Paramedic Chris Manning for being involved in this. This is a reminder, there is, as Janeen said, a guide that is available. We have put one in each of the vent cases in case of one of those crazy transfers with vents and pumps, but they're also available in my office if you'd like to get one for yourself, and it also is a PDF on ePro which you can download and look at your leisure. If you'd like some more training on the pumps or some hands-on, we can facilitate that. Just give me a shout and we'll take care of you. Good luck and thank you for watching.